Hello, Internet, and welcome to another episode of Experimental Cataclysm, the show where we talk about recent changes to the experimental version of Cataclysm Dark Days Ahead. Once again, we are in the aftermath of a stable release, and there were quite a lot of changes. There were less than last time, though, and I just sorted through them and picked out the things that I think are interesting or need to be talked about. Now, in the last video, I did miss the current state of grabs that people have been talking about quite a lot, so we will talk about that a little later in the video. Additionally, I did release a video about an upcoming Steam release for Cataclysm, and we're just, we just went over the frequently asked questions, essentially, and we will touch on that a bit at the end of the video here today. Alright, and to pop in here as the editor, there are several addendums and re-recordings in this video, and this obviously is the first one. I wanted to address an issue that people have been experiencing. These would be the crashes that are occurring when you get an achievement. I don't know if this has been fixed yet. It wasn't at the time I wrote this section of the video, so yeah. Now, a lot of people have been experiencing this. Yes, the devs are aware of it, and hopefully it will be fixed soon. People have mentioned several workarounds, such as disabling the achievement pop-up. Someone also told me that opening the achievement menu manually before receiving a pop-up also works, and I can confirm that at least it worked for me. Additionally, there may be other solutions that I don't know about, but that's all that I have for now, so let's get back to the video. So first up today from Mapgen Cataclysm, we've got the addition of a dog bite suit. Now this item will appear in animal shelter type locations, and I'm pretty sure that's the only place it's going to show up. We don't have like a dog catcher van or anything like that. Maybe we should, I don't know. Do dog catcher vans still exist? Like, I guess animal control still exists. I was going to make a joke about free animal tranquilizer, but I guess we don't have that either. Anyway, this thing is a Kevlar suit designed to prevent dog bites, and it'll do just that in the game. It's a large garment made of Kevlar, so I figured some of you might like to know that it exists. Next up today, also from Mapgen Cataclysm, we had the merging of the religious symbols mods into the core game. And just to shout out the original mod author, this was created by, it looks like their name is Cosmic Angelo. Now, I don't know if that's their Discord or forum name or whatever, but yeah, they did the original mod. Anyway, this essentially just adds more religious symbols to the game. This includes things related to Christianity, like some of the saint medallions, as well as a few variants for the Bible. But it did also include other religious or cultural iconography, like Norse symbols, things related to Judaism, Zoroastrianism, and just so on and so forth. These can appear on certain professions and can be found places you would normally find like religious articles. Now, I don't really care about this personally. These are essentially just like small tokens that provide like no major benefit to your character. But I am of the opinion that variation is almost always a good thing, and we don't see a lot of mods getting merged to vanilla, so I thought I would shout it out. So yeah, really no opinion here. I think it's vaguely cool, like finding a random religious symbol on a zombie or whatever. It does provide a little bit of flavor, hinting at their backstory. Next up today from Kevin, we've got a bit of a fix for something we talked about in our last episode. Remember when I mentioned that there were now faction events? In other words, you make a faction mad and they send goons after you and etc, etc. Well, one of these events actually involved a bomb, which I didn't look into or talk about because, like spoilers and stuff. However, apparently they just sort of like teleported a bomb to the player's general location, which is obviously that's not a great way to do all of that. So Kevin did come in and remove that event. I was on the fence about the bomb thing in general, just because it's like a pretty devastating consequence, since it could just outright kill the player without them ever really knowing why it happened. But I do like the idea of walking out of your base one day and finding a guy planting a bomb on your car, and then you get into a fight or whatever. I think there's room for some creativity here that also fits with game balance a little bit better than the original idea. But anyway, yeah, hopefully you don't get a bomb teleported to you anymore. Next up today from Alm999, we've got the addition of several chemical proficiencies. Apparently some chemistry stuff did exist before, but I don't think it was actually obtainable. Or anyway, that's what I picked up from this PR. To be honest, chemistry is one of my least used like crafting categories. I almost never use any of that stuff. So to be perfectly frank, I just don't really know much about this. The PR outlines a bit of what falls into what category, with the most basic level being principles of chemistry. If you're interested, you should have a look at the PR. There will be a link in the description. Next up today from Aaron, we've got the removal of the plastic mold. Now, I mostly only mention this because it was something that people used to lament about quite a lot if they couldn't find the recipe for the plastic mold. To break it down really simply, it was added for a specific purpose and just sort of became like a catch-all for things that required some form of a plastic mold. It didn't really make sense the way it existed. We actually have a vacuum molder now, which seems like it's way more suitable to using for this kind of stuff. So there's really not much to this PR. I just wanted to mention it because plastic molds were something people would often bring up. Moving along, next up today, we've got a change to the zombie technician from Incoherent Orange. The technicians were the zombies that had a ranged magnetic pull capable of yanking a weapon out of your character's hands. This special ability has now been removed. Since they previously had their CBMs removed, this is sort of a death knell for them being any kind of a special creature. They are now essentially just a base level zombie with no special features to them. Now I know, look, some of you will be irritated by this. Anytime there's a change like this where we say, look, it's unrealistic, it doesn't make sense, especially when it's related to special abilities or whatever, people come out of the woodwork to complain about it. But to be perfectly blunt, technicians did not make sense, and it's pretty much as simple as that. The lore around these creatures and other similar enemies have changed over the last few years. They are a leftover from many years ago, and without them being reworked, their abilities just didn't fit with the game anymore. So for now, they will remain in the game unless somebody decides to fully remove them. I don't see any reason to do that personally. They still add flavor to the game as they're sort of like zombie engineers. Maybe in the future, someone can come along and give them a fresh look and see about beefing them up in some way or making them special again. Until then, however, I guess they're just going to be vanilla lads. Next up from Mapgen, we've got the addition of a variety of foods themed around Native American recipes and at least one piece of gear. It looks like this was intended for Native American Heritage Month, which unfortunately it was merged like 5 months after that month ended. And the food here is pretty straightforward stuff that you would expect: rice, squash, things like that. The only piece of new equipment that I saw was a bottle gourd, which is, it's a bottle made out of a gourd. There's also a new book to contain these recipes, which is called The Sous Chef, which is a pretty great name in my opinion. Now, I don't have a lot of thoughts on this. I just thought I would call it out since it's more themed type recipes. I did see we had a PR about traditional Mexican food as well a little while ago, although I don't remember if I ever mentioned that or anything. Next up from, bro, I'm going to be honest, you've told me how to pronounce your name like at least twice now, and I don't remember, and I'm really sorry about that. I think it's D. Sagane is how you say this name, or Sajane maybe. I don't know, I'm sorry. Anyway, this PR removed the Valhalla cultist faction. Now look, I've made no secret about this. I don't care for this faction's theming, and there are several game balance issues with it in my opinion, so personally I'm happy to see it being removed at least temporarily. Now there wasn't a huge breakdown on why this was done, but some of the basic issues were touched on in the PR. They were discoverable on day one, for example, but their lore was that they had been building their structures themselves. The number of buildings, NPCs, and their massive amount of items just didn't really fit with the fact that they're on day one. Now apparently all of their items were also free for the player to pick up, as they were not marked as belonging to the faction, making them just a huge source of free supplies. Now for me personally, it's the theme and dialogue and overall vibe of the place that I personally take issue with. However, regardless, the faction has been disabled for the time being. I have seen multiple people say that they would like to pick up the project and tweak some things, get it in better shape, and just presumably it will be re-added in the future. Complaints aside, it is a large faction that included quite a lot of quests and a lot of dialogue as well. I don't think anyone wants to see it be permanently removed. I think it just needs some work and it needs to be reshaped into something a little different. So I do expect to see this return to the game in the future. I don't want you to think that it got obliterated out of existence. Next up today from MNG Cataclysm, we've got a static drug lab. Basically, we've had it's like a meth van or meth RV or whatever for a really long time. We've had that, and we didn't have a proper Mapgen based drug lab. Now we did have a moonshine still, which is what this location is ultimately based on. And essentially this is exactly what it sounds like. It's a drug lab where you can find drugs. Now I don't have many thoughts on this. I just thought it was like a cool addition, provided that it's, kind of rare and not like a super common spawn. Next up today from Lovum, I really just wanted to shout out that they've been continuing to rework various locations in the game. The one I have here is a revamp of the office tower. Now we talked about this last time, how they had reworked the resort location in the game. Now this includes cleaning up the files, which obviously is not visible to players, but also they changed some locations and reworked them to make more sense. And again, I just wanted to shout them out because someone, they're putting in a lot of work, some of which is like behind the scenes stuff that would normally go unrecognized by your average player. Next up today from Carol1223, we've got some reworks and expansion to I don't really know what to call it. I'm just going to say child-related things. So first of all, this added a variety of survivor note type items written by children, which should add a little extra heartache to those kind of things. Obviously, finding a note from a child who's surviving the zombie apocalypse, presumably on their own, is very depressing. It also made some tweaks, like having clothing found on child zombies be undersized so they don't typically fit the player. Now, there's quite a lot of flavor type stuff in this PR and tweaks to things just to make them make more sense. The most notable thing here, in my opinion, is that it addressed some long-time issues with item drops from these children. Now, if you've played the game for any length of time, you've probably seen someone bring this up on Discord or the Reddit or wherever. They'll say something like, hey, I killed a child zombie and they dropped a wedding dress, or why does this zombie kid have a baggie full of crack, and so on and so forth. Well, a lot of this should now be fixed, or at least presumably it's fixed. Item groups generally suck and are very nested, so there's always the possibility they'll still drop something they shouldn't, but it should have addressed most of the issues. This includes removing crack from child zombies. I saw some people complaining about this. I'm not really sure what you're complaining about. Children in the game are ambiguously aged. We don't define if it's like a 4-year-old or a 16-year-old. Obviously, the majority of children in the world do not carry crack in their backpack. In my opinion, these changes make complete sense, and the people complaining, I don't think you have an argument at all. Anyway, I'm glad to see this change. Their spawns were borked for literally 8 years it's been broken, and the PR as a whole was supposed to be about flavor. I feel sort of bad focusing on the drop change specifically. Anyway, I would encourage you to check out the children notes if you find them. Based on what people have said, some of them are pretty sad, and of course that is to be expected. These are kids dealing with a zombie apocalypse. Next up today, let's talk about the state of grabs in the game. Now, I didn't cover this before, and a lot of people have been bringing up their perceived issues with the way things are now. Basically, if you don't know, grabs are very powerful at the moment. Many people are referring to them as being broken, but after looking into the changes, I think they all mostly make sense, so I don't know if I would call it broken. It's just different. From what I found, it looks like this was the product of 3 separate PRs. It basically went like this. There were changes made, and then someone quietly reverted some of those changes and buffed martial arts, and then those changes were also partially reverted. So if that sounds confusing, it's because it is. I mean, it is to me at least. And there's no easy thing that I can point at and say this is what's wrong and this is how you deal with it. In fact, most of the complaining I've seen does not actually have any valuable feedback to it. People are saying grabs are broken or this is a bug, when in reality it does not appear to be broken and it does not appear to be a bug. Coming in here with another addendum, I was originally going to talk about how I actually agreed with the devs on the grab thing. Being grabbed by a zombie should be difficult because, it's a zombie grappling with you. However, I did play for a few hours last night, and I gotta be honest, they're pretty brutal in their current form. I struggled to break grabs even when it was a single vanilla zombie and I had a medium strength character. So although I initially thought this was mainly an issue when you're surrounded and you have low stats, it looks like they overall are just very difficult right now. From the discussions that I've seen from dev members, I think this will be reined in over the next couple of weeks while they dial it back to something a little bit more reasonable. My expectation is that grabs will still be more difficult than they used to be, but I'm also hopeful that they're going to be less brutal than they are currently. Because I gotta be honest, that really took a lot of my fun out of the game when I was playing last night. They were just very frequent and they were very, very hard to break. And then finally today, let's talk about the Steam release of Cataclysm. If this video goes up on time and Korg adheres to his release date, which I think he will, it will have been released today. regarding the video that I made a couple of weeks ago, while many of you reacted in a way that I find completely unacceptable. Many of you were extremely rude or posted homophobia or attacked Korg or myself in the comments. Even the arguments against the project mostly did not make sense or were directly conflicting with the information that we had. Now I want to be very clear here, despite the fact that I give feedback on changes that occur in the game, I am not inviting you to bash the dev team. It's completely fine to express a negative opinion and give negative feedback. However, using slurs are never going to be acceptable on this channel, and many of you were very rude and disrespectful. I originally planned to leave all of the non-slur comments on the channel because, I don't know, people should be free to express themselves. However, to be perfectly frank, I am tired of seeing these terrible takes and people being openly rude. I understand that it's YouTube, but I don't find this to be acceptable. Moving forward, if a comment hits me as rude or disrespectful, I will simply be removing them and I will be banning people moving forward. That's all I wanted to say. I know some of you are going to clap back about this. I don't really care at this point. We don't need to dwell on it. I was pretty disappointed in how people were behaving. Now anyway, regarding the actual Steam release, Korg has been working diligently to hook up a few Steam features, and this included the workshop support that we discussed previously. Based on what he has said, this probably will not be available on day one of the launch, but he will be working to get it up very quickly. So hopefully there will be a place for people to upload and maintain their mods and other third-party things like maybe a custom tile set in the future. And again, hopefully in the very near future, just not necessarily on day one of the release. There are also going to be Steam achievements. He said that they will be available at launch. Now I have not seen a full list of the achievements yet. I saw some that were related to kill count, but since it was still developing, I haven't seen the full list yet. I would assume he is hooking them into the already existing in-game achievement system, so I would think he will add a lot of those things that already exist in the game. And again, to be clear, that's just a guess and that's what I would do personally, but still though, when I learned about this project, those were the two things I expected. When it was said that there would be no new features for the Steam release, I felt like that was a misstep, and my minimum ask was pretty much, I would like to have Steam achievements and workshop support. And now it looks like both of those things will be available in the near future as of the time I'm writing this script. So yeah, for those of you who are interested, go check the Steam page. I have no idea what time of day it will appear, but it should be releasing the day that this video goes live. And to those of you that don't like this project, I would ask you to at least be kind to the new people that show up in the community. Vile crap in my comments aside, I like to think that we're a pretty welcoming community that guides new players. Those of you who do want to support the project, who are going to buy this game, I would encourage you to leave a positive review. I personally will probably be writing a review. I feel like I have to, right? So if you see my review, hit it with thumbs up, and I might post my tutorials there as well. With that though, I think we've come to the conclusion of this episode. Everyone, thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. I'll be back in a couple of weeks with another episode.